So in my books, I write about the void. It's the place between what was and what will be. So it can be a really uncomfortable place for people. But I don't feel like people really understand how to navigate that unknown place. They can get stuck for years, not even realizing they're in the void. I call it the void. Some people call it the hallway. But that place is it's a place of opportunity.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. Do you sometimes wonder what others are talking about when it comes to listening to their intuition? Do you ever feel you understand the concept, but it's not always easy for you to access your own inner guidance? Kelli Reese's path continues to be paved by her unwavering pursuit of following her own inner compass. After feeling years of misalignment and a health scare that couldn't be ignored, she left her corporate career of 17 years and eventually ended her marriage, moving to Tulum, Mexico, to embark on a healing and soul-aligning journey. Her extensive studies in spiritual healing led her to work remotely with high-achieving leaders to apply these practices as she continued in her own pursuit to dig deeper and follow her heart. The strong calling to leave and return to California prompted her to find the perfect spot to ride out the pandemic, living at 2,500 feet in an airstream above Ojai, California. In response to a little whisper to get off the mountain, she moved up north where she can now be found basking in her light-filled tiny home in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Her deep spirituality guides her to remain open to what comes next as she continues to help others access and trust in their own inner guidance. Kelli, I am so very happy to have you here, my friend. Welcome to the podcast.
So excited to be here. Thank you so much. You're like reading that. I'm like, whose story is this?
Oh, it's yours. Kelli, first of all, I'm doubly excited. I just have to share with everybody, you and I have known each other for a little while. We met when we were publishing our books. I think your first of several, my first and only. So we've known each other for a while, and I have followed your path from afar just for a while now, and I am continued to be amazed at what you're doing. So I'm excited to share your story with the rest of us, so you can kind of walk us down your path.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And you are in lovely Tahoe right now, I can tell from the back.
I am.
So, Kelli, I always struggle to start, but I think in your case, it feels like I know that there's been many pivotal moments in your life, but maybe you can take us back to your corporate life first, because I think that feels like that's where things started to rumble a bit and then
Unravel
change from there. Well, whatever word you'd like to use.
I said it first. Crumble, unravel, whatever word you want to insert there. Yeah, I had a 20-year career in natural foods. 17 of that was spent working in natural foods markets, and I worked my way to the top of that career, and I was general manager running a $34 million operation. I'm sure people will relate to this, whether they've experienced directly or not. You know how you get somewhere and you're like, something is not right about this. But you're like, I spent 17 years getting here. Why on earth would I want to change that? And so for 3 years, how I describe it in my book is that I really tried to make my round peg fit in that square hole, because I had spent so much time, I devoted so much time to it that it felt like I couldn't just give it up without really giving it a try.
Right.
Like really immersing myself in it and making sure that it wasn't it anymore. And it wasn't really hard for me to decide. It was painful. The universe made it abundantly clear that I was no longer where I was meant to be. I was the one who was like, oh, we just need to get past this and then we'll be okay. And then it was, oh, we just need to get past this and then it'll be okay. I must have said that probably 4 or 5 times before I actually said, maybe there isn't, maybe it's not going to be okay. Maybe I actually need to think about something different. And I had hired an executive coach who I was working with, And she was like, what if this is happening for you and not to you? And I was like, I already knew when she said that was the truth. So then it was a matter of me really solidifying that, okay, I'm going to walk away. And that's not an easy thing to do when you spend so much time building a career and you love what you do. It wasn't that I hated my job. I didn't. I love managing businesses. I love managing multi-million dollar businesses. I love leading teams. None of that was the issue. It was no longer speaking to my soul. Like, I kept thinking to myself, like, this job is sucking me dry, is sucking the light out of my eyes. And that was not how you want to feel when you're at work and when you want to follow your heart and when you trust the decisions that you're making and you want to be aligned with the place that you are. But it was still hard to walk away, even though I knew all of that stuff, even though I am an advocate for following my heart and I've done it for 25 years or more. I've walked away from some major stuff that people were like, are you crazy? Are you sure you know what you're doing? People ask me that a lot. I hope you find what you're looking for. I get that a lot too.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my health was on the line. So I ended up it was a very stressful job, obviously. I ended up having 3 fibroid tumors growing on my uterus and my adrenals were shot. And my doctor said, well, once you hit menopause, the fibroid tumors will go away, or we can just do a hysterectomy. And I was like, that's not how I work.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's cutting me open. And I said, well, what's causing it? And she said, well, the stress isn't helping. And I'm like, okay. To me, it was like I was willing to sacrifice a whole hell of a lot for that job and for the work that I do. And I did. I almost killed myself. I was so exhausted when I left from 20 years of pushing myself to succeed that when my health was on the line, I was like, that's it. There's no way. I've been eating organically since the 1990s. I had a restaurant, an organic, mostly raw, vegan, vegetarian restaurant. And really, I got into the natural foods world through that restaurant. And then I moved to natural foods markets, originally thinking, well, this will help me with, support my eating habit.
Right.
It was like,
Right.
you get a discount kind of thing. So there was no way in hell I was going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to sacrifice my health. Your health is everything. You have nothing if you don't have your health. And so that's when I knew. I was like, I've got to get out of here.
What's so interesting about that, though, that I like to hear, because I think that we oftentimes, especially in the corporate world, because I can attest to 30 plus years there myself, you come to a point, like you said, it's sort of like this moment that you have with yourself that's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have to
Yep.
shake myself out of this need to do what I've always felt was what I was supposed to do because of just, it's a dynamic that we've grown up with. And I love that you put yourself first. It was like, but it takes a
Finally.
while to get there, right? Wasn't it a journey, obviously, to get there?
The whole time I was in my traditional career, is what I call it, I had a parallel path of spirituality that the career afforded me the opportunity to do all these things that I wanted to do. I was like, oh, I'll take this course. Oh, I'll become a certified yoga instructor. Oh, I'll do this. So I had the money to be able to spend a year working with a Lakota shaman and do all these different things that I wanted to do. Spend a year immersed in Kundalini yoga when I was living in Montana. It was like the parallel path that I had. Eventually, it started to go like this. It was like widening. And the further that it got away from each other, the more I was like, no, this spirituality piece is the piece that I've been developing that really speaks to my heart and soul. Like this other thing, yeah, I love running business, but why can't I run a business that's more spiritually based and more heart based? And so that's what I ended up doing.
Love it. And so when you and I had met, I don't know how far out of your corporate life you had
It was
been.
like 2017, and it was probably only a year and a half.
Okay. Okay. And so when did it come to you that Tulum was the place to go?
Oh my gosh. Right after I left the career, that was in December of 2015. A couple weeks after I left, a friend of mine who was also a general manager at another co-op, she sent me a message, email, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to go to Tulum? There's somebody down there I know. He's in a van. He's hanging out. We can go hang out." And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't know. I had heard of Tulum, but I didn't know it was in the Yucatan. Like I was kind of thinking, okay, I just said yes, I should figure out where I'm going, but I just
Right.
instantly knew. I was like, yes, I absolutely need to do this. So we invited another friend of ours who was also a general manager. We all needed a vacation. And we headed down at the end of January. So it was like 6 weeks later. So I went to Tulum and I spent more than a week there. And it was the most like in my body, aligned, connected to my heart and my soul that I had felt in years. If I could have, like, if I didn't have stuff to come back to, like a marriage and people and animals, and I was going to start a business with somebody else, with a friend. If I hadn't had all that stuff to come back to, I would have been like, just throw me off here on the side of the road, like when they're driving to the airport. I'll figure it out, because I just knew, like, I was in tears when I left. I was like, I have to come back. I had hooked up with two amazing healers who ended up being really good friends of mine, who when I went back, I ended up working with really closely. And I just felt like, I remember standing in the airport in Cancun, looking back in the direction, Tulum was like 90 miles away, looking back in the direction of Tulum, and I was like, I will be back. And I thought it was going to be like 6 months. It was 18 months. I didn't understand the severity of
Right.
everything that was going to happen in order for me to orchestrate going back and staying for 2 years. I let go of everything, which was shocking to me. So in my books, I write about the void. It's the place between what was and what will be. So it can be a really uncomfortable place for people. I feel like I'm an expert at it because I always say I eat change for breakfast. I'm really not afraid of change, but I don't feel like people really understand how to navigate that unknown place. They can get stuck for years, not even realizing they're in the void. I call it the void. Some people call it the hallway, but that place is it's a place of opportunity. And so to me, that place that I was in the void after my job, I was like, oh, I was in this job. It was sucking the light out of my eyes. Now I'm just going into whatever's next. That's the void, right? I was sitting in meditation one day and I knew I was writing about the void. This is after I entered into the writing program that we did our books with. And tears were like coming out of my eyes. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I crying? I'm like, finally free. I'm moving in the direction I want to be moving in. And I just heard, because I'm really intuitive, I heard relationship. And I'm like, oh. And I knew the truth of that as soon as I heard it. And so I was like, here I am writing about telling people about how to get out of the void for their job. And I'm in a void for my relationship. So then that whole piece opened up this whole other aspect of my life that I really didn't even think I was going to be looking at, and
Mhm.
knew once I heard that and felt it that I had to. And so I had some really challenging, uncomfortable conversations with my then husband, now ex-husband, spoiler alert. And things improved a little bit, but definitely not to the point where I was like, oh yeah, this is someplace that I want to stay. So over the course of those 18 months, I took the time to really understand that I was no longer in the relationship I was meant to be in either. I had opened a business with a friend and I knew I could do that business easily. It was a market and I was like, it was in our small community and I'm like, I can help fix this place and then I'll be out. Thought that was going to be 6 months. It was 18. That 18 months I spent really surrendering, I think is the best word for it. I was letting go of everything that wasn't aligned with who I felt I wanted to be, who I could envision in the future. I was like, yeah, this is not going to be a thing that gets me there. Oh, yeah, I have to let go of this. It was super painful and really uncomfortable, but also the thing that catapulted me to like where I am today.
There was a visual that just came to mind, and I don't know why this came to my mind when you were explaining this, but I was thinking of like, Jenga, where
Yeah.
it's like you pull one. Because I believe that. I believe that oftentimes when we take a look at one
Yeah.
area of our lives, and then you make that step, even going to Mexico, even making that decision to go for the amount of time that you did, it shifted something inside you.
Oh my God, I was crying on the plane because I was like, I'd never traveled internationally by myself. I had never traveled. I'd been to Mexico 25 times, but never to the Yucatan until I had gone for those 8 days. The idea I was going down there specifically to decide. I'd had a really difficult conversation with my now ex-husband and said, things are not getting better. I'm really concerned about us. I had to memorize that for myself before I even started the conversation. I memorized, I'm concerned about us. And then I knew everything else will just fall into place with the conversation. And I wrote about this in my second book, because then I ended up writing a book about being in the void for relationships. So he had said, I said what I needed, and he was like, I don't think, I'm fearful I can't give that to you. And I was like, well, maybe that's the kind of fear you're supposed to push through or walk through. He's like, I don't think so. And we had this challenging conversation, and I eventually said, I'm going to go to Tulum and see what it's like for a month to work from there. I was like, it felt like somebody else was saying this. I had thought about it, but I was like, I can't believe, one, that I'm saying this, and two, that I'm like thinking of doing this by myself. And I was on the plane, almost hyperventilating. I was in tears, but I also felt like I was running toward something, and I just didn't know what that was. But I wasn't running away. I was definitely like leaning in to
Yeah.
whatever was calling me. I just trusted that something was calling, and I had to get there.
Well, and you bring up such a key point too, in that when you have difficult conversations, I think all of us can experience this to one degree or another. When you just said you just memorized kind of how to enter into it, because especially when it's a big deal conversation, right? Clearly it's a big deal.
Oh my God, it was so scary.
Yes.
You don't want to make the wrong decision. You don't want to hurt the person. You don't want to be wrong. That's like the biggest thing.
Yes. How did you, the two of you finally come to that conclusion at a certain point? Was it you making the call, or did you both kind of come together and say, okay?
No, he said, I support you in whatever you need to do. I want you to be
Yes.
happy. And even if that's not with me. And that was like, that was the most loving thing somebody could ever say to somebody. And I wanted him to be happy. And what I felt was I was trying to turn him into somebody he wasn't. And that was not fair to him. And it wasn't fair to me. And so I had an apartment before I left Tulum, honestly. I stayed for a month. I went down to Bacalar, which is south, even further south, almost into Belize. I stayed down there for a week. I was kind of all around, and then decided I left Tulum. I was in Tulum, left Tulum, in Tulum. I was like, nope, it's Tulum. I've got to be in Tulum. And so I went back there. I stayed in this little place in an area called La Valletta. It's really built up now. It was not then. Everything in Tulum is built up now. But where I stayed, it was really lovely. And I struck up a conversation with somebody over the wall. I was coming down the stairs. I saw this woman over the wall, this like cement wall. And I just was like, you need to talk to her. And so I was listening, as I do. And I struck up a conversation, and we became friends. And I told her, I was like, I'm just riding around on my bike looking for a place to stay. And she was like, oh my gosh, go across the street, talk to, and she gave me her name, talk to this woman. She's like, tell her I sent you, and you want to rent her apartment. I'm like, okay. It was literally catty corner from where I was staying.
Okay, that didn't just fall in your lap.
No, of course not. I walk across the street, I ring her doorbell, and I was like, hi, I'm Kelly. So and so sent me. And she said, tell you that I want to rent your apartment. She goes, oh, hold on, I'll be right down. She walks me over to her apartment that she has to rent. It's like a first floor with a little balcony overlooking the pool. I'm like, okay, this is just falling in my lap. And I was like, I'll take it. And she was like, great. When do you want to move in? And I'm like, October 1st. I was there for the whole month of August, so it was September. I gave myself a month to like go back, reorganize, or pull it all apart, just kind of get out of everything that I was in that didn't feel aligned. And so I was back, I think it was like October 7th, I came back or something like that.
Wow, I remember that. I can remember when you got that apartment, because I think when I was in Tulum, I saw you in Tulum, like, I don't know, it was probably not very far into it. You had just moved there.
Yes.
And then I remember hearing, and maybe it was that you might have posted something too about the apartment, but you were kind of showing us around it. And I was like, oh my God, she landed. I mean, it just kind of fell out of nowhere and was perfect.
But that's how everything happens in my life. And it's just a matter of me knowing when it's aligned and when it isn't. And so whether or not to like pick it up and run with it or to let it be. I've crafted that and like cultivated that knowing over the course of decades.
I was going to say, because I'm curious as to how you have honed that skill, because I feel like when you explain things to me that are happening in your life that kind of cause you to pivot from one to the next, it is almost like a voice. You get a voice, the voice tells you, I mean, very specific. You get some specific guidance.
Sometimes I get, you're on a need to know basis. And usually that's when I'm trying to get more information than is necessary, obviously, which I like because I am a recovering lover of control. But yeah, I hear voices. I talk to the unknown.
But has that always been the case with you?
I've always been connected. I've always known that. I didn't know that it was something that was in my family until I was graduating from college. And I had been seeing psychics since I was maybe 15 or 16. It was just something that I did. And I went to see one when my mom was sick. And she had told me some things about my mom and her illness. She had cancer that I was just like, I have to tell my dad. There's no way I can't tell him. So at my college graduation, I just pulled him aside and I said, look, I was like, oh my God, he's going to rip me a new one when I tell him I went to see a psychic. I just assumed that that's how it was going to be because he was very opinionated. But I said, Dad, I went to see a psychic and she told me some things about mom that I want to tell you. And he was like, oh, what did she use? And I go, what do you mean? He's like, does she use tarot cards? And I'm like,
Dad, how did you know what that is?
I know. I was like, what? And he goes, oh, well, your Nana, she got us through the Depression in LA by doing readings for people, but she read a deck of cards, which is cartomancy. But she read a deck of cards, not tarot cards. And that's how we survived. He's like, people came from all over. And I'm thinking,
Oh my God.
this would have been information that would have been lovely to have a long time ago. But I was like, okay, this all makes sense now. It's like something it's part of my family. It's like in my generational line. So for me, it was really validating.
Yeah.
It made it to me feel like this is something that is part of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
And so I really felt like I wanted to develop trust and a true connection with my guidance. And I have guides, like that's what I call them. People call it whatever they want. Your gut instinct, your internal guidance. Some people see pictures, some people get chills, some people have ideas drop in, some people hear things. Because of the nature of the work that I do all of them. My intuition and what are called the clairs, they're all very honed. Less so with dreaming, which is one of the intuitive senses, but the main ones, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance, I use them all the time, just in the nature of the work that I do. And I've developed a relationship.
Well, and I think that the more probably that you put it into practice in your life, the better you get at hearing it and seeing it and feeling it and all of that.
Yeah. Once you trust it and things fall in your lap and you're just like, people call that synchronicity. They call it manifesting. There's all these different things. I just call it my life.
Right.
I just let go. I trust. And
right.
I feel like I'm guided where I need to be. Like I had the fact that I'm sitting here in Tahoe right now with the person that I'm with is like freaking amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's like everything that I did since I walked away and from my job in 2015 has led me here. But there's no way I would have said in 2015, oh, I see exactly where I'm going to be. It was up, down, all over the place, but it was a lot of surrender and letting go and trusting in order to get here. Even leaving Tulum. I thought I was going to stay in Tulum.
I was going to say, so how did that come about?
So I had just done a women's retreat in Tulum. I co-hosted one with a friend, and the last person left. I was driving back from the airport, and my sign for things are changing is, I don't know any other way. It's like the veil that I see changes color. Things shift. It's just a strange thing that gets like this amber color.
What you see of the outside world visually?
Yeah. I don't know. It just has become my sign for things are changing. And it's not normal. It's not like, oh, the sun is going down or something like that. It's just happening in my purview. So it's my perception. And so I was like, okay. So I went back to my apartment and just sat down and got quiet and really listened. And I said, I'm not staying in Tulum, am I? It's clearly, no, you're not. I'm not kidding. I just bought a scooter to ride around in Mexico, and it had like 700 kilometers on it. It was brand new. I was putting up artwork. I had just decided, oh, I'm going to actually put some roots down. I need to figure out where I want to be. And I want to be in Tulum because I had been traveling a lot. I was in Tulum. It was my home base, but I had been traveling a ton. I had gone to Italy and England and New Zealand and Bali. And it was like this healing journey that I was on. So I was excited. I had made the choice.
But see, that's a true testament, though, to letting go. Because I have been in the place like that where I've questioned and gone, why am I feeling a certain pull towards something when it doesn't make any sense to me? And then you have that internal battle of, is this my intuition telling me? Or is this like some sort of fear talking to, like, you try and decipher what it is. It sounds like with
Right.
you, you listen and you move forward with what the direction is that you're being given.
Yes, because I know if I go against it, shit's going to get ugly. It's not going to be pretty. And you'll know this, when I'm in control, things are a freaking mess. It's like the first principle in AA. It's like, let go of control. And I see what my life is like when I'm in control. So I learned very early on, well, control is an illusion for one thing, but when I'm in control, it is a mess. It's a hot mess. So I have been very good over the years at releasing the idea that I know what's best or I'm in control. And so I
That's
did
huge.
say, though, because I wanted to stay in Tulum, I was like, okay, I'll go. But I want to know why. And all I got was, there's a rebalance coming and you're not meant to be here for it. So I assumed, I was like, there must be a hurricane coming or like something that's coming for Tulum and I'm just not meant to be here for it. Well, it was end of May 2019. And I said, okay, when do I need to move by? August 1st. I'm like, okay. So then I was like, well, I'll figure out where I'm going to go next. California was not on the list. Obviously, if it was 2019, we all know what that rebalance was.
Right, right.
I thought it was coming for Tulum. It was coming for the globe.
Wow. Yes.
And when it happened, I was like, oh, okay, I had to be in California for this. And my friends who were in Tulum were fine. It wasn't that. I was where I was meant to be for it. And I had to come back to California and clean up some messes that I just kind of walked away from, had to sell my house, get divorced. We were separated. There was a lot of stuff where I just kind of like picked up and left. And it was time to go back and, I don't want to say fix, but really let go of things. It was kind of like those things were holding a space in my life I didn't need to hold anymore. So I'm left go of most of my stuff. And the thing is I wanted to go to Italy. Like that was the first thing I was like thinking about it with my guides, and was like, Italy, nope. Spain, nope. Anywhere I asked, it was like, nope. And I thought, well, where am I going? And I got Santa Cruz. And I'm like, the only Santa Cruz I know of. And then I was like, oh, is there a Santa Cruz, Spain?
Hey, that's a good question.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only place I got was Santa Cruz. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm going back to California. I was like, I don't live in Santa Cruz. I knew the redwoods were there. I was happy. But my God, it's so trafficky. It's busy. It's nothing like it was when I was growing up. I'm not from there, but I spent a lot of time there growing up. But I came back to California. And I spent 90 days just driving around, doing house sitting jobs, and just feeling places.
Where did you grow up, Kelli? Were you
San
Central?
Carlos on the Bay Area, on the peninsula.
Okay. You were familiar, obviously, with Santa Cruz. You knew kind of the whole, yeah.
Oh yeah, I spent a ton of time there. And I was in Santa Cruz. I did a house sitting job there. I was on a house sitting site where I was just like, whatever jobs I get, I used it as my way of like following the guidance. And I had applied for a job as a house sitting job in Ojai. Ojai, I had not spent a ton of time there. I knew it was really spiritual, but I was kind of like, Southern California, I don't know. I'm a Northern California girl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was even mad at myself for accepting that job. I was like, why did I accept this job? It's 5 hours south of Santa Cruz. I don't understand. But I drove down there because I made the commitment. And as soon as I drove into the Ojai Valley, I felt this whole wave of energies wash over me. And I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. And before I left, I had an apartment. I had a yoga instructor, Brian Kest, who was amazing. He was teaching in Ojai. I was like,
oh my God.
How was Brian Kest teaching at this small little studio in Ojai? Okay. I had somebody who would cut my hair. I had a mechanic because my car had broken down. I was like, and it's not easy to get an apartment in Ojai. It's very competitive. And it just fell in my lap. And I'm like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And as I was driving out of the valley, because I was like, all right, now I got to go get my stuff, get out of the house that I had with my ex. I heard, memorize this feeling because you're going to forget. And I'm like, what am I going to forget? How am I going to forget? This is amazing. I have everything I need here. But I did. I like closed my eyes just briefly while I was driving. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to like imprint this feeling of what the valley feels like and how it felt when I drove in. And that came back around when I had my truck full. The U-Haul truck was full, and I was sitting in my sister's couch the morning that I was getting up because I had stayed overnight there to drive back to Ojai. I had an anxiety, full on anxiety panic attack, like hyperventilating. And I called my friend who knows my whole journey. I've been working with her for a really long time. And I was like hyperventilating with her. I was like, I could stay at my sister's. I'll live in my nephew's. I'll live in my nephew's bedroom. I don't want to go back there. I don't want to start over. I can't believe I have to do this. And then it all came back, and I was like, oh my God, that's right. I'm supposed to like recall that feeling. And I did. And I was like, okay, I just have to trust. I have to trust that that feeling is the feeling that is where I'm meant to be. And so I'm telling this story because it isn't always just because things happen seemingly amazingly for me, but it's scary and I question it and I second guess it. And then I come back around to trusting it. But I cried for probably that driving that huge freaking U-Haul truck. I cried for almost 4 hours of that 5.5 hour trip. And as soon as I got back into the valley, and actually as soon as I hit Santa Barbara, because it's pretty close to Ojai, I started to feel that feeling. And the closer I got to Ojai, I was like, okay, it's going to be all right. This is okay.
I have this sense, and I've only experienced it more recently in my life, but where places really have a particular energy.
Oh my God,
I don't
yes.
know. I mean, it's some places really do have that energy where you walk. I mean, I experienced it going over state lines, to be honest with you, but like
Mm-hmm.
where you feel like, oh my God, I'm back, I'm home. Even if it's a place that you have never lived in before. That's where I think it becomes really profound.
Yeah, the first time I ever went to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, my
Mhm.
foot hit the ground. I came off the plane. It was when they would let you off. I don't know how it is now, but they let you off on the runway. My foot hit the ground and like this whole wave of energy rushed through me. And I was like, I've been here before. I loved Puerto Vallarta. I was like, again, like Tulum, I'm like, I could just leave me here. Everything will be fine. It's that kind of feeling for me too.
I believe that. I totally believe that. So
Yeah.
you stay in Ojai, you ride out the pandemic.
Yeah, I eventually moved into an Airstream. I bought an Airstream, and yeah, so I met a friend on. I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to meet people because it's not the easiest thing to do when you're single and don't have children. So I went on the friends portion of Bumble dating app. They also have a friends part, and I met somebody on there who she was looking for a hiking partner, and we went hiking instantly. Like had a connection, a friendship, and I met her husband and their dog, who oddly enough I'm taking care of for this month and is sitting right below me because they're in
Oh, I
Italy.
love it.
But we all became friends, and they lived up in Upper Ojai, this area of Ojai that's on top of a mountain at 2,500 feet, and there was like 3 levels on this property, and I was there one day and I looked up to the top level and I was like, I'm going to live up there. My friend's like, I don't know that she's moving. The person who lived there, she's like, I haven't heard that she's moving, but okay. I was like, she doesn't know me well enough yet. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, she texted me and she was like, oh my God, she's moving. I can't believe it. And I didn't have an Airstream at the time, but one of the other people on the property was moving out of their Airstream and then agreed to like let me rent his Airstream and move it up to that spot. So I moved into that, and I was like, his Airstream was a cluster. Oh my God, it was a mess. So I'd lived in it long enough now. I was like, you know what, I could do this. And so then I bought an Airstream. I had sold my house, got all that other stuff in place, filed for divorce, all that stuff. I pulled his Airstream off the pad, put mine on, and then I ended up living that Airstream for a couple of years. I only stayed in Ojai for another year, and then I moved. I got as you said in your intro, I had to get off that mountain. I did everything I could to be welcome there, to like, I asked permission to be there. I was like, is this like I'm not supposed to be on this land kind of thing? I could not figure out what it was, but it was a great place to ride it out because of the people that I met who became really good friends of mine. And we spent every weekend together doing pizza parties and hanging out. The pandemic for me was a lot like my regular life. honestly.
When you felt that you had to get off the mountain, though, what was that? Was that just a feeling of never feeling like you fit into the place, or did you have signs?
No, because I had that energy of like going into the valley, and it was just like, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be. I do
Yeah.
have this like new every two kind of thing. Like every 2 years, I move somewhere. It seems like, and it had been 2 years, but I also my business was stagnant. New clients were coming in, and the person whose property I was on, she was not the easiest person to rent from because she was very controlling and very micromanaging. Lovely person, but those things did not work well for me, especially in a living situation. It was just enough things that piled up that I was like, I've got to get out of here. But then I don't know, something pushed me over the edge where I was like, I have to get off this mountain. I called my ex-husband because I had the dog and the cat. And I was like, can you take Charlie and Lucas? And I'm going to drive north into the Pacific Northwest to figure out where I'm supposed to land and where I can park my Airstream. He was like, sure. When do you want to do that? I was like, in the next week. I was just like, I have to go. And
Yes.
then that night I was driving home from town and I heard the name of my friend whose property I live on now come drop in. And so I was like, oh, I need to call and check how she is. And I asked her how she was. I called her and I said, how are you? And she's like, not good. So we talked about that. And then she asked, how are you? And I was like, I have to get off the mountain. I can't stay here in Ojai any longer. She was like, well, if you need to park your Airstream somewhere, I have a pad in this place. And I was like, what? Why? And the house that she lived in, like, had been rebuilt at the top of her property, and there had been another house down below. And so the driveway was there, all the infrastructure was there. She had to set it up a little bit for me, but for the most part, I was like, seriously, I would totally do that. And I knew where she lived because I'd spent so much time in the Sierra Nevada mountains growing up. And I loved the area. I didn't exactly know where her house was, but I knew her and I trusted her. And when I came back to California and was in Santa Cruz, I actually had spent some time house sitting for her and taking care of her animals in her house in Boulder Creek, which is right near Santa Cruz. So she knew my whole story and we'd been connected. But I turned that move around in 3 weeks. I was like, I've got to get somebody to drive the Airstream up there because I didn't have a truck. I have an Airstream owner without a truck.
Well, yeah, you were moving it for a couple of years,
Yeah,
so you didn't
yeah.
need it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I figured, well, if I decide I want to drive around and, be moving and be on the move, then I'll trade my hybrid in for a truck. So within 3 weeks, I had orchestrated the entire move and was parked in her spot. It had to happen. And the thing is, my business like started to pick up. I got a client right before I left Ojai. Actually, a client came in and then another client, and all of a sudden everything was rolling again. I was like, oh, so it's like that stuck energy of place.
I was just going to say it kind of like it's like a log jam, and then all of a sudden things start to flow again.
Yes, exactly.
But now you're in your tiny home. You have to tell us about your
But I
tiny
am in
home.
my tiny home. Yeah. So I stayed in the Airstream for a year. Again, I knew I had to get out of the Airstream. I was like, this is done.
Yep.
I just followed the guidance. So I asked the person whose property I live on, I was like, what would you think if I put a tiny house in this spot? And she was like, that's okay. 3 days, I think it was like 3 days later, 5 days later, something like that. I was on Facebook Marketplace where I also found my Airstream. And 6 miles away, somebody was selling a tiny house, and I didn't want a loft. I didn't want to have to climb up anything to go to bed. And it was what's known as a park model. So it needs a wide load, like vehicle in front of it to move it. But it was a tiny house on wheels. And I'm like, I asked my friend, I was like, will you go look at this with me? And before I left, I was like the first person to see it. He said he had like 32 people who had reached out, which I totally believe him. And I had given him a deposit. Before I walked away, I was like, maybe 2 days later, I was like, what am I doing? Oh my God. But then I put my Airstream up for sale. It sold in 5 days to a traveling nurse who was in Utah. And I was like, okay, I just have to trust this is all falling into place like everything else. This is right. When things start not falling into place, it's a good sign too.
Totally. Well, I was going to say, and that tiny home, just from what I could see, it's amazing. I mean, you've got total view. You have the windows, floor to ceiling. I mean, it's really pretty. It's amazing.
Every time I walk in, I'm just like, I love it. It's my home. I
Yes.
put in the
Oh,
floors myself. I painted the whole place, like made it
oh,
my
I love
own.
it.
So
That's the best way to do it. So tell us what you're doing now. Like, where are you in this, you're in your tiny home. You're now in the Sierra Nevada mountains,
Yes,
which is beautiful. You're in Tahoe now, but
I am.
what's coming next for you?
Mm.
What is going on now? Maybe you could, where are you? Are you in a new relationship? Are
I
you
am.
good? That's good to hear.
Yes.
And that was a fairly serendipitous thing, but we won't go into it. But that was, once again, as Kelli's life shows.
Yes. And I have to say, I did a lot of work to be able to be in the place that I'm in right now with
Yeah.
the person that I'm with and welcoming in and showing up for another person. I did a lot of clearing work. That's the work that I do with people is clearing work. I did a lot of clearing work around some very strong limiting beliefs that I knew were holding me back. Like it takes two in a marriage, and my ex-husband is not the solely to blame for our relationship, right? There is no blame as far as I'm concerned. But in my second book, I really talk about it and take responsibility for my part. And so there's a lot of things I had to do in order to be ready to welcome somebody in. And the final part of that was clearing some really strong limiting beliefs that I have, like available people are boring. That's one that came up. I was like,
Yeah.
if I keep choosing all these unavailable men, what the hell's going on there? It's like, and I uncovered a limiting belief that available men are boring. I'm thinking, well, that's not going to be very helpful.
Right. Time to change that, which I like that because I think that's that's a doozy.
Love is painful. That came straight out of my relationship with my dad. Again, though, going to be really hard to recall in the person you want to be in a long-term relationship with, or anyone for that matter, if you believe love is painful.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's things along those lines of just, they would come up, I'd do clearing work around it, I'd let it go. It was just like, and the clearing work that I do is easy. It's not, you don't have to go back and relive anything. And so I can really see the benefits of the work that I've done over the years in the past, and especially in this last year, because I
Yeah.
would have run the other direction from this person.
I just love it. And I love that you are where you are right now because you're still evolving. You're still open to what comes
Oh my
next.
God, yes. I get excited about what comes next because I'm like, it's not up to me. Like,
The beauty of it is that you are surrendering to whatever's going to come next. But I do think also, like, when I think of where you are in your evolution, I mean, if you think of yourself now and where you were back when you were leaving your corporate life, like, what do you think is the most profound change that's happened?
I think the most profound thing is for the first time in my life, I feel more comfortable in my skin and being authentically who I am and not really allowing, like, not taking other people's behavior or their emotional, the things they're going through personally. And that's freeing in and of itself. But, and some of that comes with age. I'm 54, but most of it for me is that I've done the work to get here and I'm dedicated to my growth. And so I don't know what's going to happen, and that's exciting to me. And I also love the things, like, to me, the universe has a better imagination than I do. That's what I always say. I tell my clients that all the time.
It's like you can't make this shit up.
No, and you know my story.
Seriously.
You know where
But
I am right now.
that's what I love. And the fact that 6 months ago, you would have not even thought about it. It would have not even have entered into your mind. Because, they always say, like, ask for what you want or something better.
Mm-hmm.
Because the universe typically will deliver something even better if you put it out there.
So much better. It is the things that I asked for. I mean, we all have that list, especially when I've done a lot of relationship coaching and things like that. It's, if we create this list, but it's a list that we created for who we were. And then we go about our daily lives and we grow, and especially if you're on a spiritual path, and that list is not usually relevant.
Yeah.
Like the things that you want change, and hopefully your partner is changing with you. But if they're not, then that creates quite a distance between the two parties. So I have a list, and I updated my list as I was growing and changing and understanding what I wanted more of. Like, it shifted what I wanted.
Yeah.
And what I was willing to welcome in.
It's like you're still the gatekeeper, right? You can still decide, you can still make those decisions. But it just feels like, Kelli, by the way, I'm going to keep we're going to have all of your links in the show notes, just in case anybody wants to take a look at what Kelli has done, which is amazing work with women over the past 13 years now.
I do work with some men now.
Oh, and some men. Okay. I was thinking it was all women, but okay.
Yeah. No, I work with men now too.
Nice. I bet you're able to make some pretty profound shifts with men too.
Yeah.
But so, Kelli, I first of all want to thank you because you're one of my favorite people for many, many reasons. But this strengthens sort of my awe of you because I don't know if that sounded right, but it strengthens my sense of you as a person. My thought of you as a person has always been that you're very brave, you're very confident, but you also have that humility and that you've shown us like it's not always a walk in the park. It's not the easiest thing.
God, no.
And you've had to choose yourself above the fear in a lot of ways and in different circumstances to kind of get to where you are now. And it's so beautiful to see where you've ended up. And I can't wait to hear more. I mean, and luckily I get to, because you and I always will stay in touch. But seriously, I really am grateful for you. And I'm so happy that you're able to share this with everyone because your story is a true testament to investing in yourself and listening to your own voice. So
thank you.
Well, you have a wonderful time in Tahoe because that is just the best place anyone can ever be.
Thank you. I will. Thanks for having me on.
That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word. So more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.